Hello everyone, and welcome to this Motor Trade Radio Supplier Special with your hosts Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson.
Hello and welcome to our latest Motor Trade Radio Supplier Special podcast. Today we're delighted to be joined by Nancy Rignall, Managing Director and founder of Prospecting Dynamics. Nancy will be a familiar name to many listeners. Her high-profile career in the automotive sector started at Ford in the late 1980s, when she was in the same graduate intake as Paul Philpott, now President and CEO of Kia UK, Paul Vanderberg, former President and MD of Toyota GB, and Lance Bradley, former MD of Mitsubishi. That really is an impressive cohort. After 10 years at Ford, Nancy moved into the dealer sector, first as sales director of Corner Coventry Group, and then CMA sales principal for Sandycliff Motor Group. Then from 2001 to 2013, she was head of Mapfre Abraxas, the leading GAP supplier in the UK for many years. After which, she launched her own business, Prospecting Dynamics, the automotive consultancy services company. So Nancy's joining us for this supplier special to talk about Prospecting Dynamics, the work she does with dealer groups, and share some of her views on what she's seeing in the sector. So welcome to the pod, Nancy. You and I actually go back a long way, so I'm delighted to have you on the show, especially as you're a regular listener too, aren't you?
Oh, I absolutely am, Curtis. No, it's great to be on the pod. Thanks. I mean, it's my favourite source of industry information because I can listen to it at any time. Just great. So yeah, no, I'm delighted to be on the pod. Thank you very much for having me.
You're more than welcome.
It's a pleasure, and what a career, and what names to be associated with as well, Nancy. Well, it's fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I had a lucky start.
All right, so you build your own career. You've done. It's great. So I mean, no, it's fantastic to say. One, thank you from myself and Curtis for supporting the podcast. As I say, I know you're an avid listener and supporter, and two, it's a pleasure to have you on as well. So, I mean, obviously Curtis has given a bit of a background there, but let's start off with your business now, and for the benefit of the listeners, can you outline the services you offer at Prospecting Dynamics and maybe share some of those clients that you do work with on a regular basis as well?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I mean, really, we're all about customer experience, and it's the part that the phone plays in that for the retail customer. So the services we provide cover pretty much anything a dealership needs to build or strengthen a relationship with a customer via the telephone. I mean, obviously, my background coming from Ford, and obviously it coming from Ford at the time when options was launched in the UK. Ford said there had to be a better way. I can still remember the script. I started the business with finance renewals. And pretty much that was kind of what we did for about the first year to 18 months, which is still hugely successful, but gradually branched out, being asked by regular customers, would you be able to do this? Would you be able to look at that? And we picked up more and more pieces. And as I say, it's pretty much everything now. So from an outbound perspective, so we cover new model launches and sales events. That's not the largest part of what we do by any manner of means, because we are small, medium size. So sometimes for those kind of things, it's huge wadges of data, and that's not something that we can deliver. But we definitely do very targeted stuff for customers. We do CSI follow-ups, we do mystery shopping, we do lost lead follow-ups, obviously, and of course those all important service bookings from an inbound point of view. So we provide a full service booking solution, right from answering the phone as the dealership to entering the customer on the DMS when they're booked in. And for almost 2 years during and after COVID, ran a very successful showroom overflow service for I think then it was 4 dealerships for available car, whilst they finalised and perfected their own internal team. So, talking about COVID, that brings me on to another service that we offer. I think I mentioned when I was speaking to Curtis initially when we spoke about coming on here that we diversified during COVID because a lot of other outbound services certainly were being switched off at that time. And thanks to Dash and the team that were at Marshalls at the time, we moved into doing sales process review. They called it call monitoring. You may know it as we now call it inquiry management analysis, because that was something that became huge initially for Marshall and then went on to become huge in the whole of my business, really. And it at one point was certainly more than half of what we were doing. I'd say it's settled back down to about 40% now. But we've stepped on quite significantly from that. I'll probably talk about that in a bit more detail later. But you asked me about customers that we work with. We're really lucky with our customers. We've got some fab customers some of whom have been with us a really long time. Some since right from the beginning, more or less. And different people using us for different things. We've got dealers who genuinely want a relationship with the customers. So, family run businesses, TJ Vickers, Blackshaws, Sturgis, who've been working with us a very, very long time. Ken Brown Motor Group, Simpsons, Luscombe's. Some people working with us consistently, some people use us every now and again. And again, of course, we've been able to grow and develop our services by being pushed and held accountable by some of the bigger boys. So Holcroft, John Clark, LSH Auto, Lookers, Marshall for many years, just to name but a few, really.
Well, that's an amazing portfolio of clients you've got there, Nancy, and familiar names to certainly a lot of listeners. Now, looking specifically at the work you do in call monitoring, or as you say, inquiry management analysis, when you take on a new client, what are some of the common issues you're able to identify specifically with inbound calls, and how do you get them to rectify them?
So I think, and again, with our big passion on customer experience, this whole piece has been something that we've loved getting involved with, and it's so massively changed since we first started doing it. So just to be clear, what it does, it looks at the whole process, so the whole customer journey, right from the very, very first touch point when the customer first makes contact via the telephone with the site. So whether they speak to a receptionist or whether they go straight through to sales or whoever picks the phone up, right through to what that actual relationship with the salesperson looks like on the phone, to do the end upon the inquiry management system, to does it become a sale, and what the whole customer experience is in there. And it's we've gleaned through this an extraordinary amount of information because we've been doing this since the beginning of 2021, and because we had huge wadges of data going through for quite a long time, we've got almost 800,000 fully analysed retail transactions that have given us really critical data in terms of where all the touch points are on a customer's journey with a dealership to buying a car that actually lead to them saying, yes, I'm going to buy and going ahead. So every single touch point we can see kind of what the significance of that has been in that customer's decision, and with that amount of data, the stats just don't lie. I mean, normally you find that the marketing companies or even some of the stuff that comes back from the manufacturers who are doing this all the time, I'll say, we surveyed 2,000 people. We recently surveyed 2,000 customers. Well, hold my beer. Here we are with 800,000, and we've got some pretty specific information back from those. You asked me, Curtis, about what we can kind of identify,
Yeah,
and I think the
some,
important thing.
some of the common issues that even now when
Yeah,
you're monitoring a
absolutely.
call and the sort of things that you're hearing, and you're thinking, "Oh, really? Have they just said that?"
Yeah, no, crikey, absolutely. The thing is, I hasten to add people that customers that we've got now who have been doing this for quite a while, or even customers who've come on it and are already seeing improvements. Um, the actual stats that I'm going to give you are probably going to be worse than this industry wide, because what we've got now is we've got customers who are regularly doing this and acting on the results, and so consequently are much better than the
Yeah,
norm.
of
But
course.
if I look at the whole book and give you the stats on the whole book, which obviously gives from what happened in the beginning, it's going to give the averages and average out with what the very good performers are now. And I think you can pretty much say that the as I say, likelihood is that it's probably slightly worse than this industry wide, because there are people who just unfortunately don't do it. It can't be taken as a reflection of anybody who works with us now, because they're just not on these averages. It does look shocking, I'll just warn you. Firstly, the number of calls that just don't get
Yeah,
answered at all, and that's 13%. So if you think how much money is ploughed into marketing and advertising and making sure that we are driving customers to pick up the telephone, and 13% of the calls just don't get
yeah,
answered in the first place. The scary thing then is that we then see that 28% of the calls that are picked up, so more than 1 in 4, don't actually get through to a salesperson on first attempt. So whether they're held up with a receptionist or a host, or even, bless them, sometimes service picking up the bounce round call, you've got a customer not getting through to a salesperson. And even some of our current great customers struggle with this. And we have seen some sites where it's nearly 40%.
wow,
So, more than a third of customers not speaking to a customer, speaking to a salesperson on first attempt. And there is no doubt that this is going to affect sales and closing rates. Absolutely will, because things have to happen so quickly nowadays for a customer. This is a huge issue. Then, once the customer's enquiry has been answered and we're moving forward and handling the enquiry, the salesperson's dealing with the enquiry, then it's like, well, okay, so how many actually make it onto the DMS? So the old adage of what you don't know about, you can't manage. So if the sales managers who are all really busy and they've got 10 million things to do, and unless they're standing over their salespeople all the time, how can they possibly know every single customer and every single transaction that's happening? So we're relying on the salespeople to make sure that those inquiries are being logged so they can be managed properly. Just under 34% don't make it on to the inquiry management system within 24 hours. So whether they're using Inquiry Max or they're using Salesforce or they're using whatever it is, whatever their own in-house system, whatever it is, just under 34% don't end up making it through. There are other stats I can give you as well, things like the fact that 20% of the conversations with customers are just lovely chats, and there's no actual actions agreed or no kind of control of the call. And when I say control of the call, I know we're all scared to death of over much sales process. I mean, remember, I come from Pendle days. This was the sales process that was being taught.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
Remember them far too
and
well.
also yeah, yeah,
I remember them far
absolutely.
too well, Nancy.
But
Yes, yes.
yeah. So, but I mean, lovely, a Guy Allman with BTC, and some great stuff. But it just seriously, we're not talking about a controlled sale process that makes the customer think, hang on a minute, I'm in a controlled sales process. The best control is where the customer is just has no idea, and this is
yeah,
just a beautiful conversation as far as the
yeah,
customer's concerned, but the salesperson has some direction, and there is going to be some positive outcome for the dealership. It's absolutely no good if, and again, the calls that we are monitoring, some of them Okay, are only minutes, couple of minutes. Is the car available? No, thanks. Customer hangs up. Great, that was a great inquiry. No, that's gone nowhere, that lead. But then you've got a customer being on the phone like 25 minutes and they're asking loads of questions. So clearly, there's loads of buying signals here. And the salesman's doing a great job and he's got all the product knowledge and he's answering everything. And it's lovely and friendly and it's great. And at the end of the conversation, the customer goes, "Oh, yeah, no, that was great, Phil. Thanks ever so much." Puts the phone down, and Phil's sales manager says to him, "Okay, what's happening with that customer?" I don't know. And we've captured no details.
Yeah,
We can't call the
exactly.
customer back.
Yeah.
It's scary stuff. So, it's really the whole purpose of inquiry management analysis, the whole purpose of monitoring these calls is to highlight at what point are we potentially losing the customer.
Yeah.
And it can be right from the very beginning, but there are loads of little points during the course of the process where we could be losing the customer. And it's just to give such clear visibility as to where is that. Where is that actually happening? And our customers who use this information and use it quickly and effectively will not have as many lost leads, will be categorically closing more sales, and will be more profitable, because we all know that at the end of the day, it's not all about cost.
Yeah, and obviously thinking about those outbound calls, Nancy, and two big areas you do help the dealers with is those you sort of alluded on for incoming and outbound calls is, but obviously that follow up and retention, and obviously my background is dealers, and it's the
Yeah.
customers come in, they've made the time out with you to make an inquiry, coming into the showroom either physically or virtually through a telephone call or digital inquiry, whatever format that's in. And then we kind of don't follow. There's the follow-up side of things. But, what are the common mistakes you've identified with both of how are these addressed by you? What are you telling the dealers how they need to address those outbound follow-up and retention calls with customers?
Yeah. Certainly outbound calls, to making a call for retention, it's the whole making an assumption about the customer and whether they are likely to change and that kind of thing. And I think sometimes we're just a little bit, we fall into a trap of being a little bit too, arrogant's not the right word, presuming that the customer's going to stay with us, presuming that they're going to, we can't afford to be complacent about that anymore, really, in terms of retention, because there is too much competition out there. There are too many brands, and the product is all great now. It's not. Obviously, we've all three of us have been in the trade a long time, but I mean, I go back to my Ford days, and pretty much there was us and Vauxhall, and we had the majority of the market, and that was it. Nobody else came anywhere close. And if I look at my own experience in terms of retention, and anybody who knows me, my friends and friends in the industry will know and laugh. After 10 years with Ford and Ford Credit, literally you cut my arm off and there's the blue oval. And I drove Ford all my life, all my working life. And whenever, I've had a choice about a car, I've gone Ford. And then this year, for the first time, I've come out of Ford, and it's basically been because of the way I was treated. And there is just so much competition, and I have been so much better looked after by the dealership who did sell me my car. I've moved, and that's after years and years and years. So I think, without bound retention calls, I think it's all about positioning it properly. And we've got, we have got dealer customers who are incredibly successful at this, and even those who work with us to where we make the initial call for them, but they continue it from that process. Doing it, making sure that it's just a retention calls should all be about contract review. It's all the customer's choice. We're offering a friendly chat with coffee, and whilst you're in with us, we can let you know the current value of your car. That's always good to know, isn't it? You can have a look at what you want. You can have a look around the showroom if you'd like to. There's just no assumption that the customer's going to be buying or making a buying decision on that day. So the pressure is off, and the customer is so much more likely to go, yes, I'm gonna come in. That's great. And then what can quite often happen, even if we set up the call and we set it up beautifully, and the customer's like, yeah, no, I'd really like to come in and talk to you. No, I think, yeah, that probably is a good time for me to come in and speak to you. And then a salesman calls up to confirm the appointment. Oh, by the way, Mr. Hutchinson, I understand you want to change your car. And straight away, then all of a sudden the pressure's on again. So
Yeah.
it's just the whole, making sure that that is set up correctly in the first place. Don't make an assumption about the customer. And this is, again, for retention, you can't ever pick exactly the right point. I mean, the manufacturers have done loads of great research on this, and looking at what the average change point is for their particular customer. And we all like to think, okay, we know because of the averages what the sweet spot is, and we might say, the sweet spot's going to be 2.5 years into a 3-year contract, or 3 years and 2 months into a 4-year contract, or whatever it is. That's going to be the sweet spot. But that's the sweet spot. That's not every customer. So categorically, we've seen customers, and again, I'm going to quote one of, I won't name names, but one of our really good regular customers here, who will do all the hard work before they get the data to us. So they look at the equity position of their customer, they look at what the current marketing plans are, they look at what they could potentially put the customer in. This customer's in a really good position. And you've maybe got a customer who's put down a 50% deposit in the beginning, and they've maybe not had the car very long. If that customer wants to change, they might change at 8 months or a year or 18 months. Conversely, you might have a customer who's in a brilliant position to change, but actually doesn't want to change until 2 or 3 months before the end of the finance agreement. So it's just not making assumptions and not putting the pressure on the customer, just providing that option to come in and chat, but it's all friendly, no pressured. And then once they're in the showroom, you work your magic, let them see that beautiful product, the smell of new, the feel of new, all that business, and it does its work for you. But it's just those mistakes, I think, really.
That's fascinating, Nancy, and it just shows the importance of building up that, establishing and then building a rapport with the customer.
Yeah.
Whether it be retention or certainly on those outbound calls and getting them into the showroom. Now, one of the things I'm particularly interested in is one of the biggest issues you as a supplier must face is that of dealers weighing up their return on investment and the conundrum they often face when outsourcing. So how do you resolve that in the conversations you have with dealers?
Yeah, it's always going to be a big one, because the industry is cyclical. We have great times, we have not so great times, and generally, when we're in the not so great times, the first thing that most people do is cut outsourcing because it's an easy cost to cut. I mean, some people will cut all, look to cut all cost, outsource cost, whether it's good cost or bad cost. But it's a question of being not only a good cost, but a very, very evident return on investment. And I'm pretty passionate about this. I mean, why would anybody outsource anything unless it's worth their while? Why would they? You might be lucky. Some suppliers might be lucky. If there's a resource issue, you might pick up business because a dealer hasn't got resource at the moment to handle that. But that could easily be a temporary thing. It could be, as I mentioned, we were, we had a contract with Available Car for quite some time, but we were fully aware that they were building their own inbound team, and we were there whilst that was being built and perfected, and we knew, and as soon as that was built and perfected, we'd be going. So you can't rely on resource being the way that you keep a customer.
Yes.
So I have to say, there's a few of us that I know in the industry just a few suppliers who are genuinely working to make money for their customers, because that's how you keep your customers. They have to be making more, whether it's in pound notes, it might not be pound notes, but they have to be making more than their spend on you. There has to be a very, very clear benefit.
Yeah.
We've got our regular customer for retention who made 1,200% return on us in a quarter. I mean, obviously, I'm too cheap, Curtis, but
you need to put the rates up.
that on one side, yeah, I clearly do. But yeah, so it's kind of just really making sure that you've got ROI. Another thing that really gets my goat is not understanding your customers' issues. How can you be a supplier in the motor industry nowadays? How can you possibly provide a comprehensive and valuable service if you haven't got a clear understanding of the challenges that your customers got? Okay, I'm lucky. I've my background, I've worked finance company, OEM, dealer group, and supplier. So I've seen all the areas of a customer journey. But a large part of my responsibility, I think, to prospecting dynamics and to my customers is keeping on top of industry issues so that we can continue to tailor our offering, we can sharpen it, we can make it better, we can try and stay as much as we possibly can. It's so hard with automotive, but try and stay ahead of the market need. I mean, again, thanks Motor Trade Radio podcast. You don't half save me some time, guys, sometimes. It's and car dealer mag newsletters. There's It's really, I have to pick my resource. Where am I going to get the best return on my time of investment, which is time for me, because I don't have loads. Just to make sure that I'm really, really trying to keep as in touch with the market as I possibly can. So I think, in a nutshell, you've got to deliver what the customer needs, whether it's information about what's working well and what needs to be improved for them to make more money, whether it's helping them move the needle on CSI or it's increasing contact to appointment ratio, highlighting areas where, we can see, and again, in call monitoring, this happens quite often, where we can see easy wins for profitability. And honestly, Curtis, do you know what? If you can't do that, you don't deserve to have the business.
Yeah, exactly. And you talk about easy wins, and that's certainly something that dealers do appreciate when you can show them those easy wins. But do stay with us, Nancy. We'll have more about prospecting dynamics after this break.
You're listening to a Motor Trade Radio Supplier Special.
Well, in this first half, we've obviously outlined what you at Prospecting Dynamics offer to the industry and how you work closely with dealers to improve processes, drive profitability back into their businesses. But we thought in this second half, Nancy, we thought we'd sort of think a bit, ask you to look at some of the industry trends and practices you're noticing. So should we start off with the all-important initial first point of contact with retail and service customers? What are you starting to see out there at the minute?
Oh, this is another favourite of mine. Philip, you've got me on another one of my favourite topics. So, first point of contact. And again, we get this reinforced all the time when we are doing inquiry management analysis work. First point of contact. So, it's scary. Again, 18% of calls on average are poor at first point of contact. So, and I mean, I'm even talking where there are reception teams here. So sometimes no full professional welcome to the business, or it can be a rushed response, or transferring the customer without telling them what's happening, or not setting the call up properly for sales, not capturing some initial information or capturing too much information. It can vary from, as I say, reception putting a customer through without telling them they're actually transferring the call. And it can go from that to reception keeping the customer on the phone for 5 minutes, capturing every single thing about the customer, almost including the inside leg measurement, and then putting them through to a salesperson without giving that salesperson that information, and the salesperson has to start all over again. So it can really, really make or break what that actual transaction with the customer goes on to look like. So it can either be beautifully set up for sales, or the salesperson can be on the back foot because they've got a really fed up customer by the time the customer's through to them. One of our customers in early days of inquiry management analysis recognised this, and invested heavily in some training for the whole of his group, for his reception team, and they are consistently flawless nowadays. We score their calls, and it's reception between 96 to 100% flawless, and it tends and the 4% drop tends to be if they have a temp in, or it's a weekend cover or something like that, but just flawless customer handling from the first point of contact. And you have to think about it. Great reception team is fabulous. They set the tone for a clear and professional warm welcome, putting the customer at ease, making them feel valued, making them feel that they've made the right choice by picking the phone up to your dealership, and then that great handover to sales. But you've got, obviously, and again, we know resource cost. There are dealerships that run without reception teams, and I think in those instances you've just got to be absolutely 100% confident about what first impression you are giving to a customer without reception. And it as well as on the phone when they walk into the site as well. Again, if there isn't a receptionist, I don't know about you two, Philip and Curtis, last time you walked into a showroom, but when you
I was
walk in, if there
ignored.
is a
I was actually ignored.
yeah, it definitely does happen, doesn't it? And that's that has happened to me too. But the difference, if you've got a reception desk, it's a focal point for the customer, and somebody knows where to start when they first walk in, or a very, very well trained showroom host who'll approach the customer, with a warm smile and ask, a question, can they help or whatever. But it's like you and I have both suffered then, Curtis, customers just wandering around trying to find someone, and the sales team are all tied up with other customers or got their heads buried in paperwork at the desks. So, it's the whole kind of, where does the call go? So is it answered by reception? Is it answered directly by sales? And what's the first impression of the customer at that point? Does it bounce around a hunt group and it gets picked up by the poor old service team who have quite frankly got enough on? But then you have to go another step and go, service, oh, crikey. And at this point, I can almost burst into tears. Unfortunately, the majority of what we hear when we start listening to calls, it's very difficult to identify. There are great call tracking systems, and a lot of dealer groups spend money to make sure that they are doing this properly, and they can see where they're spending the marketing and where the return is. But it's very difficult to be 100% sure that calls that come in, even on what should be a sales line, are actually a sales customer. So sometimes we're hearing service customers, and it's not until we hear the customer say, I'd like to put my service in, that we know at that point it's definitely service. And so we stop scoring at that stage unless we're actually scoring service, which we also do. But I have to say the vast majority of service customers do not have a great experience when they call in a dealership. The phone will ring out for sometimes 6, 7, 8 minutes before it's answered. And again, I know it can be a resource issue. And again, don't get me wrong, we've got customers who've got fantastic people in services, very, very well trained, who are very committed, who deliver fabulous service. I'm generalizing, it's not every dealer,
Yeah.
but you do find that you'll get a service department and you can hear how harassed they are when they pick the phone up, and this is the customer wanting to spend money and book in for a
Yeah.
service.
Yeah.
My overriding view is that people forget about first point of contact. It's one of those really, really obvious things that just gets overlooked. Like, I remember when I was a little girl and I used to go out with my mum and dad for the day. We'd go for a day trip in the car, and you'd stop at a cafe. If we were really lucky, it might be a little chef. but we'd stop at a cafe and we'd go in, and my mum would go in the toilets, and she'd come out and she'd say to me dad, "We're not stopping, Dirk," and that'd be it. We'd be off back in the car, and it'd be because her first impression, she'd go, "Right, toilets not clean, we're not staying here. If they're not doing that right, what else are they not doing right?" And it's just little things that make
Yeah.
such a massive impact on the customer's first impression of your business.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's those first impressions, isn't it? I mean, they're so important. And as you say, some dealers get it and they get it right consistently, and others it's not addressed, or it lapses because of they're stretched, they're busy. But up until now, we've been very much talking about the sort of soft skills of salespeople. But I thought it'd be an opportunity to ask you about artificial intelligence and the use of AI in car retailing, because it's certainly accelerated over the last 12 to 18 months. What's your
Huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's massive. So, what's your views on the benefits and limitations of AI for dealers in the sort of conversations that you're having at the moment?
Yeah, I can absolutely see the benefits of it. It's the way of the world. We're evolving, and we have to move with the times and take advantage of things that can streamline process, improve customer relationships, um, uh, improve experience. I can absolutely see the benefits of, for example, being able to crunch absolutely huge swathes of data in seconds to give recommendations to whether a customer's in equity, what a great deal for them might be, by the fact that AI can look at marketing programs, stock, finance settlements all at the same time. Yeah, it's got to be the way. It's kind of a necessary evil, if that doesn't sound too awful from my side. I really don't like, Curtis, the thought of the environmental impact
Yeah.
of AI at all. Really don't. And I'm all for human connection.
Yes.
That's me, and that's where I've built my business. So it's hard for me to embrace it. But even we at Prospecting Dynamics are using technology. But I hasten to add, we use it where it helps us, but we stick with people where it matters. I mean, thinking about specifics and thinking about areas where I can see clear benefit. So, response to digital enquiries, everything's about speed of response, which is something that during the whole of this conversation we've not even touched about on at all. But speed of response,
Yeah.
crikey, again, that's changed so massively since I was first, and I'm going to say from working in dealership, when at that point it became really clear to me what response you needed to have to deal with the customer's enquiry. But looking then to looking now, speed of response and how quickly you have to react to a customer is, oh crikey, it's gone forward so fast. We've got such a short window to actually deal with a customer before we have lost them to somebody else, which is why your lost leads, your inquiry management, it's all so vital. Sorry, I'm going to rein myself in there and come back to this. So response to digital enquiries, if it's done properly, if AI is utilized properly for digital enquiries, it massively improves a dealer's chances of holding on to a customer who can't speak with sales right now, because that is the important thing. It's the speaking with sales right now. If that can't be guaranteed, then absolutely with your digital enquiries, but please do it properly. It can't be a blanket response. They're just too easy to see through. It's customer relationships, it's all about making that personal. There's not enough qualification done, in my opinion, still these days. We just imagine that we know what the customer needs, we don't actually ask. And response to digital enquiry is great, but I am still to be persuaded that there is any benefit in using them on the phone.
Is there
An example Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, at the risk of going off at a slight tangent, Nancy, that but at the end, the AI with yourself, someone like yourselves involved with it, it's still, the AI will still need to understand process and understand how to
Yeah.
speak to a customer. I mean, sometimes you might think that some of
Absolutely.
the AI actually might be better than some of the ones that are being handled by a person. But
There is
is
that.
there a world in which someone like yourself and your business can actually help the AI world in handling inbound inquiries, even if it's not the whole process, but actually just that initial inquiry?
Crikey. I remain slightly reluctant if the customer has picked up the phone, because I always think if the customer has picked up the phone, that's because they actually
That's how they
want
want to
to speak to
engage.
somebody
Yeah, yeah,
at that point. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think there is a need to engage. And it's important that we don't forget, still nowadays, 95% of enquiries will end up on the telephone at some point. So yes, we know that the world has changed, and the customer's going to WhatsApp us, they're going to go on the website, they're going to do they might engage with our chatbot on the website, they might send us an online inquiry, they might email us, and all these we have to engage with the customer the way they want us to engage with them. They might text, crikey, all that stuff.
yeah,
But I still feel quite passionately that if the customer is picking the phone up, they want to engage. And even those digital inquiries at some point will end up on the telephone. So it's vital that everybody is phone fit and they're ready to deal with that inquiry to the best of their ability. But
yeah,
in my experience, thinking about it, the four main reasons that a customer might want to pick up the phone. So speed and efficiency, if they want a quick response to something, because they still think, right, okay, immediately, if I can get a hold of somebody, I'm going to get this answer straight away, and I don't want to wait for a reply to an email. And let's face it, with inquiry and management analysis, we way too often sorry, customers ringing up chasing an online inquiry they've submitted that hasn't been followed up. So that they might want some clarity, and if they've got a complex query, it's much easier to sort in a single conversation. Second reason, some people still want human touch and connection. That's me, massively, obviously. Tone and emotion are very difficult to convey in writing. If you want to understand your customers properly, then again, telephone, very, very important way to engage. Conversation builds trust. If you're actually having a conversation, you've got some rapport, you can do some qualification. This is all qualification, massively, massively still overlooked. So again, reassuring the customer this is a big decision, they need to feel confident. Third reason the customer might want to engage on the phone, sensitivity, if it's a sensitive subject. Sometimes there are reasons why a customer might want to talk on the telephone. Somebody might have had a car might have been written off. They might need a new car, and the car's been written off, and maybe they've lost somebody. There can be all sorts of
yeah.
things where sometimes it just needs a human ear. Maybe they need a little bit of connection and support for the purchase. It avoids misunderstandings. There's on the telephone, there's a lot fewer, oh, that's not what I meant, kind of
Yeah,
moments.
yeah,
And then finally, preference. Some people just want to speak to somebody rather than go into digital mode. And we've still got an aging population who, at the moment, still some do not have email or do not want to transact on email. Not everybody can or wants to communicate digitally. So, and I mentioned about 95% of enquiries ending up on the phone. But again, still important to remember that 69% of customers will try the phone first.
yes, yeah,
Still.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And I think there is still a place for that. And I mean, just sticking with that, and you talk about qualification, you talk about that decision process, and a change in customer behaviour environment. And talking about the subjects at the minute in terms of those electric vehicle marketplace for the new and used electric vehicle
mm,
sales. I mean,
mm,
you know, there's a view that they need handling slightly differently. It might be the first time they're entering that EV environment. They need some
yeah.
other clarification, a better qualification process. How much are you now getting involved with, this EV inquiry handling? Is there an involvement, or are you just
Yeah.
treating everybody the sort of same, or how's that?
No, it's really important, and to be honest, Philip, some of the reasons that we've been engaged for kind of inquiry management analysis is monitoring how electric vehicle inquiries are being dealt with, and just making sure, you know, the head of the business has a very, very clear idea of how they expect electric vehicle inquiries to be handled within their businesses, and it's sometimes not translating. So what we're seeing with electric vehicles, and the danger areas really there, and again, it really all comes down to qualification and not making assumptions. Is the two big fall down areas are, firstly, assuming the customer's got more knowledge of electric vehicles than they have. So a customer rings up and starts asking questions, and the salesperson does a great job and answers the questions that the customer's asking, but does the customer know what questions they need to ask? And without us doing any qualification, we can't identify that without us having some clear understanding of exactly what the customer's knowledge of an electric vehicle and how far down the process are they. Without our understanding of that, how can we possibly give the correct answers on that? The other areas of shortfall still are either the salesperson's knowledge, or it might not be the salesperson's knowledge, it might be the can't I just sell what's easy and in stock. So, and again, forgive my sweeping generalization, we hear loads of great salespeople, but we do also definitely hear the cherry pickers who will go, okay, this is an electric vehicle customer that isn't sure, so this could potentially be a lot of hard work for me. Or I could sell them the petrol version, the hybrid that I've got in stock here today, and that's going to be a lot easier for me because they understand that and know that.
Yeah.
So we categorically do hear salespeople making an assumption on the customer's level of knowledge. We hear pushing either into an electric vehicle, which again isn't always appropriate. It isn't always appropriate. Again, if you've got somebody who has never had an electric vehicle and is categorically at this stage really still not wanting one, if you push that customer too hard, they will walk away. You can do a much better job of trying to educate the customer once you start into the process of the inquiry and potentially get them into the showroom. I know some of our dealer customers who've really invested a lot of time and effort into making sure that their showrooms are beautiful places to provide education for customers on dispelling some of the myths that still exist about electric vehicles and the scariness of them, and the lack of range, and all the horrendous bursting into flames and all these ridiculous myths that are still kind of carrying on. So and that's great, but you need to get the customer in the first place. So again, it's just all coming down to just taking the time to qualify. So I mean, you asked me, Phil, do I feel it needs to be done differently? I feel like it's the old doing it properly again, but just doing it properly with a view to an electric vehicle rather than an ICE vehicle, really.
Yeah, I think you made the point earlier of that qualification is even more crucial than ever. And as
Really,
you say,
really is. You can't overlook it.
yeah, and you made the
Can't
point
overlook
there
it with
that
EVs.
line of least resistance has always been a problem, hasn't it, in the sector? That, you know, why go down a complicated angle if I can go down a much easier one, but not necessarily best for the customer. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
And Nancy, final
Yeah,
question
definitely.
for you. This supplier special airs at the beginning of the 75 plate change. How are you helping dealers to maximise the impact of the new plate, not just in September, but through Q4 as well?
That's a great question to finish on, Curtis, at this fabulous time of year. I, yeah, I still remember the August the 1st and being in the showroom at midnight.
Yes.
I think the excitement of those days has maybe gone, but it's still an exciting time. And of course, it's still a big issue for our industry, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's all about maximising every inquiry, and the build up to the September plate change for us is very much on those lines. The demand for our services coming up to September is always retention and lost lead, and it's really the dealer customers that we work with, looking at, right, how can we make sure that every single inquiry that's coming into the business, we are lining those up beautifully for the plate change month and getting everything, we've put so much time and effort and resource and money and into this, let's make sure that we are going to absolutely thrash our targets. So it's really the build up to September is all about that, and we are always at our absolute busiest in kind of July and August. And then once it actually gets into September for us, it just starts to quieten off a little bit again, as everybody is in the position where they are like, right, okay, we know where we are now. That it's like the first week to 10 days and you have a very clear idea of where you're going to be. But I think, I'm talking about it starting to get quieter as you move on, and we sometimes let kind of November and December be a little bit quieter than they need to be. I think everybody's spent their marketing budget, and they've and it's kind of a case of just making sure that we are getting all the budgets agreed for next year, what are we looking at, what the target's going to be in-house and from the manufacturer. But again, the quieter it gets, the more important it is not to miss any single opportunity. I mean, how much do
Exactly. Yeah.
those really valuable auto trader leads cost? How much do they cost? £200 lead, maybe? What's cost per lead? Don't throw that money away. Work your processes, and it's again managing your inquiries, following up, looking at what your lost lead analysis is telling you about why they're not converting, and just making sure that every single opportunity is looked at, worked beautifully, and the person who makes the decision that this is not going to be a sale is the manager and not the salesperson.
And I think what a great way to finish this chat, Nancy. I think clearly throughout all of this, I mean you talk about those percentages right at the first half there, turning some of those percentages up a little bit. Every lost inquiry is a potential sale. Every handling them slightly better. And I think
Absolutely.
that everything you've talked about today is it's just really doing it the right process, right qualification, helping the consumer make that right decision. Every little bit. And as you say, as we move into Q4, turning every single opportunity, whether it's inbound, outbound, retention, follow up, whatever that channel is trying to make the best for that every single customer to turn them into a sale. And suddenly, it may not be as quiet, to your point, as it needs to be. So I think it's great, and
Exactly.
I think as you noted earlier, we've all been in the industry long enough, and we've been talking about this kind of thing for long enough. And I've been on the other side, having those frustrations as to why that customer has not been handled when they've gone to the effort of ringing into the dealership
Yeah.
in the first place, and we've just let them go, or they've come in, they've spent 2 hours in the showroom test driving various cars, and then we've not contacted them. We've not,
Yeah.
the
Not
main
followed them
thing,
up.
we've not
Yeah.
followed them up, and we've done nothing. It's kind of, I think you make some fantastic points. So, I mean, it's been a huge, insightful conversation, and I think people listening to this conversation were thinking, do you know what? I do need to just do that a little bit better, have a look at that area a little bit more, improve those efficiencies. And maybe if they're not having a conversation with you, then this is the time to pick up that phone to you, Nancy, and have a conversation. And speaking of that, for the Motor Trade Radio listeners, how can they get in touch with you? How can they find out more about prospecting dynamics and how you can help them and their businesses, because this is about, as you say, it doesn't take many sales to get a return on investment with this kind of thing. It won't take many sales to do this.
No, it really doesn't. It's marginal gains, Phil. It's like you say, turn the dial just a couple of notches on a number of areas, and all of a sudden you've got a big impact. It's very, very straightforward. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to say go to our website because I like human interaction, so I'd say please pick up the phone. I'm on LinkedIn. Everybody can very easily find me on LinkedIn. You can direct message me on LinkedIn. Of course, you can go to our website if you'd like to, but but no, please, all my contact details are on LinkedIn, so you can either message me there or you can email me directly at Prospecting Dynamics, or give me a call. I'm always happy to chat.
Well, Nancy, many thanks for coming on the pod. Have you enjoyed your pod experience?
I really have, yeah. I mean, I could have been on for about 4 hours, Curtis. I think you and Phil have got away light, really.
We love to talk anyway, Nancy, so don't worry about that. And
Good.
It's always an interesting subject, isn't it? It's very difficult to contain everything that's going on in the market into a short, brief conversation. So it's
and I think when
fantastic.
you're passionate about what you do as well, you just, we all care about the industry, don't we? So you just get into it, and that's it. So
it comes across. Well, look, Nancy, many thanks for joining us on the podcast, and many thanks to listening to this Motor Trade Radio Supplier Special with Prospecting Dynamics.
Thank you for listening to this Motor Trade Radio Supplier Special, presented by Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson.